We are recording.
All right. Let's check the time. It is 6 p.m. So let's get started. This is the Suamico Village Board meeting for Monday, July 7th, 2025. The time is 6 p.m. At this time, I would like to call the meeting to order. Just a reminder, we will be having public hearing this evening. When you do come forward, if you wish to speak, please speak directly into the microphone. Provide your name and address for the public record if you would. At this time, looking at the agenda, I would look for a motion to approve the agenda.
Hold on a second. With the agenda,
Yep.
I noticed that 2 of the board members said they weren't going to be able to make it last time, and we put something fairly important on this agenda, number 7. There should be a full scope of people for that, and I see that there are, but they had excused themselves, and so I'm going to vote against this agenda tonight. Because number 7 is on it, and we only intended to have 5 people.
But we have 7,
We do have 7,
okay?
but they had already excused themselves. I do see they're here for whatever reason, but that shouldn't have been on this agenda then.
Well, I mean, you can certainly vote in any manner in which you please.
And that's why.
Okay. Anyone else on the agenda, notes on the agenda? Anyone wish to offer a motion on the agenda? Would you like to offer a motion to not approve the agenda?
No,
Okay. Would anyone like to offer a motion? I'll offer a motion to approve the evening's agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a second from trustee Andrews. All those in favor of approving the evening's agenda, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed?
nay.
Name.
Motion carries 5-2. Okay. At this time, let's stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. So we are on to item number 5 this evening, which is public appearances. Public appearances is reserved for you in the audience to come forward and speak on an item that might be on your mind, but not on the agenda necessarily. If you are here for an item on the agenda, we will do everything possible to give you an opportunity to speak if you wish. Is there anyone who wishes to speak to an item not on the evening's agenda? Please come forward, sir.
Jerry Vanderstein, 2902 Overlook Court. You just had McKeefrey and NEA through the road on Overlook Court. And what I got is McKeefrey parked their truck right in my front yard, and the gentleman must have been using the back door as the bathroom. So they went and urinated with the door open, so they urinated in the crotch of the door. And I got a yellow spot on my lawn, so they must have used it a lot more than the couple of guys that I seen. And I was just kind of concerned about that. They don't put no porta potties anywhere on that whole subject. Plus, if they would have just went to the corner where all the trees are, they could have just snuck into the trees, or even the pine trees on the other side that you didn't trim apart. They could have just walked in over there and you wouldn't have seen nothing going on. And then later, when the asphalt guys were doing it, one of the guys just stood between the truck and the trailer and urinated away from me, and I just happened to catch those things, and I just wanted to bring it to your attention, that's all. And not, I mean, I guess it don't really bother me that much, but we got neighbors that got 4 little girls, children on the other side of the road from me, and then going next door to me, and there's a bunch more children that are going to school and stuff. And then now with the summer school going on, they're actually walking from their houses to catch the bus on the end of the road and stuff, and I don't know what, but I got pictures of it here if you want me to leave them with you so that you can see where the truck was parked, and you can see the yellow spot on the lawn.
Yeah, why don't you leave them with our clerk, if you would?
Sure.
And then, was there more?
No, that's it.
Okay. So is that a note that you can,
Yeah, we don't have anything in the contract that prohibits the use of, the outdoor bathroom, but we can certainly add something that's a little more stringent and clarifies what's acceptable here, and then if they don't follow that, there's more of a penalty to pay.
well, just maybe even just a heads up to them,
Yeah. Yep.
They have to have that.
We'll address it with both MCC, or Northeast and McKeefer. Do you have any idea which one was more of a problem than the other, or was it both of them?
Well, I guess it was just the ones from the culvert guys, McKeefer, I think was the guys doing that.
We'll talk to them.
And I only seen the one guy from the asphalt doing it, and I wasn't watching for it or nothing, it's just that I happened to be there, and then I get to have the luxury of seeing that they're doing it, you know, and then when I was mowing the lawn, I'm looking, and there's this big yellow spot, so it must have been a lot more than what I figured, because, you know, I do it in my yard around here and there too, you know, and I don't leave a yellow spot on my lawn.
And to clarify, there
Inexcusable,
wasn't
though.
an outdoor bathroom, they used your yard,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So that's,
You know,
I
I
just
mean,
want to make sure that was
it's a
clear.
big-
It wasn't like, hey, there's an outdoor bathroom and,
There is no porta potty at our locations.
yeah, so they should,
Yeah, and I mean,
Count
if
for
they,
that.
I don't know how they do it, it was a bigger project, you know, but if they would maybe put 3 of them around, but there was the woods back on the other side across there where that's intact too, and then there was places that they could have just kind of snuck off to the side, but they weren't using those, you know, and it was just kind of,
so if you're not a barbarian, you don't pee in someone's yard, basically, is the point that we'll want made clear to those two.
The item is, we've referred the item back to staff to take up with McKeefer. It's not on the agenda, so we really can't go into a deep dive on it.
yeah, I just wanted to bring it to your attention, you know, and I wasn't
Appreciate it.
watching for it or nothing, and it just showed up at my place, you know, and
Sure.
since I got more time to watch people doing stuff, I guess, so I happened to catch it.
All right, we'll pass it on, thank you.
All right.
Is there anyone else who wishes to come forward for an item not on the agenda? Nope. All right, we will conclude public appearances and move on with the consent agenda. The consent agenda this evening consists of previous minutes of the village board dated June 16th, 2025. Item B, June 2025 municipal court reports. Item C, Brown County intergovernmental 2025-2026 property tax bill agreement. And item D, temporary Class B beer and temporary Class B wine licenses for Knights of Columbus Council 6764 Car Show in Booyah at 12787 Velp Avenue on July 27th, 2025. Those are the items we have on the consent agenda. Is there a motion with regard to the consent agenda this evening?
Motion to approve.
And second?
Trustee Eckert has offered a motion to approve the evening's consent agenda. That has been seconded by Trustee Romas. Any other further comments or questions from anyone on the board? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. And those opposed? That motion carries 7-0. Thank you. All right, item number 7 this evening, planning and zoning items. Item A, public hearing, potential amendments to the Village of Suamico Municipal Code, Section 18.05, establishment of zones, and 18.09, RS residential Seward. Zoning Administrator Dunks.
Thank you. This was reviewed by the board at your May 18th meeting, not 18th, but your meeting in May. It was sent to Village Legal for review, and the final product is before you tonight. Planning and zoning did take one more look at it in between that time frame and recommended approval of it. This is a pretty substantial change to the residential sewer zoning. We are taking it as it exists today and going to divide it, or suggesting to divide it into 3 different classifications: an RS1 for single-family, RS2 for single-family and duplex, and then the RS3, which would allow multifamily along with the single-family or duplex with reduced lot sizes and whatnot. So the only substantial change from the legal review was to add the line within the code that says what happens to today's existing RS zoning. It'll all automatically become RS1 based on this code change if adopted.
Okay, are there questions or discussion? Anything for Zoning Administrator Dunks?
Well, again, I'll say I'm okay with R1, but R2 and R3 are definitely not. It's gonna force not just residential sewer, but all of us to have to pay for a lot more services that sidewalks, more schools, neighborhood parks, 24-hour fire. It's going to lead to more police, more DPW, leaf pickup, stop signs, roundabouts, libraries, more animal control, deer population, overpopulation committees like Howard, public transit. It's going to cost more money. And that's going to affect the whole village.
Okay, are there any other further comments or questions? Otherwise, this is a public hearing, so we can open it up to the audience unless someone else has a comment they want to make.
I can just offer a comment?
Of course.
You know. So I actually have a problem with RS1. And I did bring this to the attention of planning and zoning, and they debated it and voted how they voted. What we have here is a situation where we've taken all of our existing residential sewer, and we've removed the ordinance that governed what residential sewer was completely. What we've done is we replaced that now with 3 new sections. So when we were, when this was brought up to us back in April, it was brought up to us as adding more tools. What they, in the end, ended up doing was they didn't add more tools, they removed and replaced the tools that were there. I don't think it's in the best interest of the community for us to put an ordinance forward that doesn't have a tether to the prior ordinance. As we look through the zoning and potential locations, as planning and zoning, one of the people in planning and zoning comment, there's only going to be a handful of locations that would apply. Well, then for that handful of locations, we should have a tether. We should have something that says, you know what, in this area, RS1 doesn't even make sense. Because RS1, understand, it's a significant change. We've gone, and the board has been very cooperative with planning and zoning this side, right? So planning and zoning came with these numbers, and we're like supportive. So RS1, I think, is what, 70 feet wide?
Yes.
So that's a dramatic change from the 100. And then from there, it drops down, I think, to 65 and 60, I'm not sure. So I'm not comfortable with this ordinance as it is because it doesn't provide that tether. I have a lot of thoughts on this. I don't want to take up too much time, but it doesn't really answer a lot of the questions that was brought up to us back in April. And I'm not so sure that we want to pass an ordinance that needs to be fleshed out more. For instance, did we talk with the schools? Did we find out what the schools felt about having more population? Because at the end of the day, you know how we always put that little graph up after tax season that shows how much money goes to the schools and how much to Brown County and how much to NWTC and how much we ask for. But if we build to a point where we're forcing the schools to go to referendum, then we're not really good partners with the schools either. So it's important to me that we keep that, and that in the process that we go through this, where we are going to look at areas, or hope to look at areas where we can have more density, that we do that in a measured way. So what I would do is I would strike, or I would add in RS 0 or whatever you want to call it, make that the existing zoning, and then you can get rid of that language that you had to add because that existing zoning is already there. Because what that language essentially does is now takes any area that's in Suamico that's currently residential sewer and makes it residential sewer 1. So I'd get rid of that, and then I would put steps in the process where we would go through as a committee, you would propose areas. Say this area would be a great area for us maybe to put RS3. Maybe this would be a good area for apartments, right? So we have apartments near Urban Edge, we have apartments near Onope, and have the school board come in, let the school board hear and understand, or a member of the school board, understand what the impact might be to them. Because as I understand, their schools are full, and they just got done with the referendum, and now we're talking about, you know, fixing potentially a problem, which I'm not even sure that this fixes a problem. We're talking about addressing an issue that will then end up causing more problems with our partners in the school district. So for those reasons, I can't support this ordinance as is. And many more reasons, but I also don't want to go on for half an hour.
Okay. Before anyone else weighs in, should we open it up for public hearing? So this is a public hearing, so anyone who wishes to speak on this item, this is your opportunity to come forward. Provide your name and address, and please let us know what's on your mind with regard to this item. Anyone care to come forward and speak to this? Welcome.
Amy Rubright, 2274 Cathedral Forest Drive, Suamico. So I've been following along with the meetings for the last few years, but the last few months. And for me personally, being in the community, I do have concerns about R2s and R3s. The map in the packet back in May is a little hard to read to see like what areas those are gonna go in, how many units we're looking at, population-wise, how that might affect my property for resale value. So, and then other issues that have been brought up from fire, EMS, you have a denser population, higher crime. So those are concerns I have from that perspective. Also with the one map about talking about adding this sewage in, that comes right, it stops, the purple area stops right before Cathedral Forest that I live on. So I think Fairview Drive is in that. So I'm not sure like how that works if you guys decide to put it in there. You're affecting people that don't have it, and then are you gonna go down my road? Am I gonna be assessed and have to be forced to have that when I don't need it? So those are some of the concerns that I have on the issue. And then I'm not speaking on behalf of the school board, but I do sit on the school board. So from that perspective, though, I just want to offer up, I'm not sure what talks have been in place with the school district, but there is issues with seats at the different schools, not all of them. And I don't have those exact numbers, so I hope those communications are ongoing with that issue as well.
Okay,
Okay?
thank you. Anyone else?
Good evening.
Hello.
My name is Jennifer Sundstrom. I am the Director of Public Relations and Government Affairs for the Realtors Association of Northeast Wisconsin. And I believe I'm here tonight to just simply kind of recap some of the information that we've been providing over this process that you've been going through for the purposes of the hearing tonight. Namely, talking specifically about the housing crisis that the country, the state of Wisconsin, Northeast Wisconsin, and specifically Brown County in this area is currently experiencing, and the need for solutions here that namely can only come from the local level. When it comes to the significant lack of housing inventory, a healthy real estate market has about a 6-month supply. And over the last 4+ years, we've hovered around 2 to 3 months of supply. And even less when you look very specifically at the price points such as $200,000 to $300,000, which is what we call the missing middle. There you only have usually a handful of options for where your largest portion of buyers are. Yes, interest rates have gone up. It has affected the real estate market. But one thing I think it's really important to look back on is that we had a significant housing crisis long before the interest rates went up. When they were at historic lows, we were at a point where we were seeing multiple offers coming in on properties where they were having to bid $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 over ask, way back then, pre-COVID, even with low interest rates. So when interest rates do go down, it's going to help in some regards for some types of buyers, but we are also predicting that we are going to see a flood of new people entering the market that have been on the sidelines because of those interest rates. And those are, all, for the large part, going to be first-time homebuyers who do not have a house then that they're going to be able to put on the market to make up for the house that they're looking to buy. So waiting for interest rates in order to solve this crisis is not going to be the solution. Since the last recession, we've been significantly underproducing new lots and new housing starts. This is the reason why we are in the inventory crisis that we're in, and thus this affordability issues that have accompanied it. Currently, we're producing about half of what we need each year, with the deficit growing with each passing year. In Wisconsin, for instance, overall, we used to create, on average, every single year, about 14,000 lots. And each year, we've been averaging around 4,000. Again, a typical year around the state, 14,000 lots created. We've been down to about 4 every single year for quite a long time. So like I said, really digging a deficit with every passing year. In 2020, the Green Bay did a housing study for the city and some surrounding communities around them that stated that just for that smaller pocket, by 2040, they needed an additional 140 to 310 multifamily units each year, and an additional 170 to 375 owner-occupied units each year. Now, I think this is really good opportunity to talk about why do they, and I'm seeing this in similar studies all across Northeast Wisconsin, why is there this big range of how many housing units they potentially need? Well, this comes down to whether we want to recruit any new citizens to the area. Are we going to just try and provide enough housing for our current citizens, which we're not doing, versus what kind of units would we have to produce if we actually had in-migration? This is a really important conversation because by 2030, Wisconsin is slated to lose about 130,000 workers, aging out of the workforce. In the last 10 years, net migration in the state is down by a third compared to the 1990s, and Wisconsin is ranked about 40th in job growth. So when we're talking about a lot of our area businesses, one of their greatest issues has been the ability to recruit workers to fill jobs and to maintain workers. There's been 2 enormous issues they point to over and over and over again: childcare, but also housing. Not having housing that is accessible and affordable to their workforce. And that's just current employees and current jobs, let alone if we want our economy at some point to be able to expand. But even if we look at that very low end of how many units we need to create, we're still far from reaching that minimum goal. And it's affecting citizens across the board. Retirees are not able to downsize when they want to, and younger people, our first-time homeowners, are often facing enormous hurdles. The cost of producing a new entry home has also doubled in the last 5 years. If you picture just 5 years ago, what was sold for around new construction, about $200,000 and $250,000, just your basic 1,600 square foot home. That same home now is about $400,000 and up, depending on which community you're in and the cost of that land. The new goal of affordable housing for like entry-level new construction is maybe $350,000 in certain communities. And that's impossible. That is actually impossible unless it's on a small lot. Speaking of costs, I do want to address the question and very serious concern about whether having additional residents and new homes is going to create higher taxes for existing residents. This is a very important question, and one I am very grateful we addressed thoroughly in our research quite a few years ago. In-depth studies, they were done for Brown County, Fox Valley, they were done actually around the country. And what an economist looked at is if you created 100 new housing units, at what point would those housing units start to pay for themselves, let alone added the tax base? And this is in a nutshell. Algorithms, studies, reports about this thick. Universally, about 100 housing units, and this is before housing prices went through, doubled in value. About 100 housing units after about 5 years. For 5 years, yes, you're going to see a little bit of an increase in demand for services. But after 5 years, those housing units not only pay for themselves, but then they end up subsidizing the existing taxpayers. In other words, without those new residents, existing taxpayers would be paying more for the same level of service that they're receiving. It's another reason why our communities right now are competing for this growth, to grow their tax base. And you are. You're competing against communities all across, not just Brown County, but Northeast Wisconsin for the most part, to increase tax base, both commercial and residential, and the two are tied hand in hand. If a community isn't growing its tax base, it's going to face a very serious crisis with levy limits about being able to pay for services. And so that is why communities are trying to find incentives to bring and attract that development into their community. So yes, those homes, those new homes that are going up, especially at the values that we're seeing for construction now, are actually going to be the saving grace for a lot of our existing taxpayers in the long run. If a community isn't growing, it's dying. It just, there's no such thing as Mayberry. It can look like it's staying the same for a while, but at some point in time, if you're not having jobs, if businesses aren't growing, and if the community isn't growing, it is going to start to die. At some point, citizens are not going to be able to pay for the services, the just natural inflationary increases for their services. The question of how do we provide housing in the future, I think, is the main question. And if we're ever going to right the ship and start digging our way out of this housing deficit, we're going to have to, every community is facing this, have to accept the fact that we have to do housing much more differently, much more, that's not good grammar, much differently than we've done it in the past. Because of the amount of housing we have to create to build ourselves, pull ourselves out of the deficit we've been creating, but then also to be able to create housing that people can afford. The way we've always done things is just going to have to change. In communities across the state, across the nation, this is what I do all day long, they're having these conversations everywhere and they are changing their ordinances. In fact, just around you, the ordinances are being changed much more drastically than even what you're looking at right now. First, we're going to have to recognize a couple just basic pieces of information to help inform the fact that we have to do housing. And I'm talking about demographics and the changes in our demographics. I talked about this before. By 2030, about half of all of our households are going to be one-person households. They don't need 2,000 to 3,000 square feet for their housing needs. And they're also not going to want to pay Wisconsin taxes for space that they're not utilizing. The traditional age of the first-time home buyer, because of what we're experiencing right now. It used to be early 30s. Now we're looking today, it's 38 years old, and we will soon hit 40 years old in the next year or two. That has huge implications for our society and for our economies. If an entire generation is not going to be able to start building equity, something that previous generations were able to do at a much earlier age, or start a family until they're almost halfway through their life. Many others would like to be homeowners, but all of them are just about giving up on that American dream. Some people are saying, well, those young people, they don't want to be tied down with homeownership. That is not what our surveys say that we're doing all over the country on a regular basis. Younger generations absolutely want to be homeowners. They want to be able to have what their parents and their grandparents were able to have. But their hope when they're looking at costs and their salaries and what it costs for a down payment and all of those things, they're starting to give up on the hope of ever being able to do it. That's the difference. All of this leads to the inevitability. This is just what it is. This is what we're having to face. Smaller lots, smaller homes, more housing options such as townhomes and duplexes, which is what you can create to fill the void for that missing middle working class, to provide some hope of entering the housing market for many working families. The best way, then, to incorporate these various housing options, most of the time is within one development. We've got to get away from, well, this is where all of our $800,000 homes are, and this is where all of our $500,000 homes are, and this is where all of our 300 and 200. It's just, I don't know who invented that, but it's a nightmare. It's not how we had done development traditionally in this country, and it's led to this enormous economic class warfare, where we have citizens every single day. I watch them walk up to the microphone, and for whatever reason, they don't feel like it would be a good idea for them to live next to the person who teaches their child in school, or who polices their streets, or who takes care of them in an emergency room. These are the individuals, our teachers, our police officers, our nurses, who are struggling to find housing. And to think that they need to be relegated on the other side of the tracks or some other community because we don't want them living here in our neighborhoods. I don't know how we got here, but we've got to start reversing that. And the best way to do it is go back to how we did developments in the past, where you had a variety of housing options and price points all within the same neighborhood. And I can tell you it's also how our developers are able to provide those price points and housing options, is by spreading those costs out through the entire development. It also helps mitigate risk for them. The changes to your zoning code that you're considering are critical, but I have to tell you, solving that problem does not stop there, because the zoning code is just a tool, as you mentioned. If it is not utilized or used effectively, unless there's going to be an overall mentality shift in a community, meaning that one of the community fully recognizes the extent of the problem. You either do or you kick it down the can for the next village board who has to sit and figure out how to provide housing and grow the tax base. The urgent need to address it. I've been talking about this for 22 years. We finally hit a crisis. The willingness to think outside of the box and accept change. A desire to do what is right for the entire community, not just now, but in the future, and the courage to stand up to NIMBYism and to continue to fight to educate the population about why there is just no other choice but to make these kinds of changes. I can speak to some of the questions if you want about school boards. I can tell you around the state, most school districts have declining population, and they would love nothing more than to have the problem of having more children entering the school district. Most of them are having to close schools, collapse budgets, because they just are in a continued decline. So to have a robust school district is an incredible blessing. Communities constantly are changing zoning codes, and they grandfather then, is where grandfathering came in from, properties that then apply under the new code. The only time it's usually really a problem is when the code becomes stricter, where you're requiring, for instance, larger lots, and then a home is not conforming. To make a code more flexible really doesn't affect the existing property owners when it comes to being able to navigate within that code. Trying to remember if there were other questions. But those are also issues that Mr. Caker and Mr. Dunk could also get into more specifics about. But I'm doing this all day long. I'm sitting with communities who are doing in-depth housing studies, who are completely revamping their zoning codes, who are completely revamping their comp plans because they realize that they just have to. And you're competing with them because they're all looking at the desperate need to try and attract the very limited supply of developers and builders we still have left after the recession. And it's not just about for them changing their zoning codes. They're trying to find incentives to bring those developers to their community. And I'm not sure, I guess your administrator can talk more about what is going to happen in Suamico if you can't start attracting more growth. I'm happy to answer any questions.
450,000 is a basic house?
It depends on the community and how much the cost of land is, but yes, on average, that is about how much new construction, between 350, if you can get really small lots, to about 450.
So you want us to have less than basic houses?
Define what a basic house is.
I don't know, you're the one that said it.
You go around, we'll be happy to take you into any new subdivision where they're putting up new construction that is at that lower end of the price point, the lowest they can get it, which is around 350. You have beautiful houses. They're going up all over the place, and they're selling faster than they can put a for sale sign in the yard.
How are duplexes homeowners?
Because you have duplexes where one person, right, might own the property. But zero lot lines, for instance, there are actually two addresses there.
But that's not a homeowner.
Oh, yeah, when it's a zero lot line, they both
like a
own a
condo.
side.
Like
No,
a
it doesn't have to be a condo. Condo is where they only own the property, but the land is held separately. not the property, the home, the residence, but the land is not part of that. But zero lot lines, it's just an invisible line down the middle of what you would consider a duplex. And you have two separate owners. They have their own address, they have their own mortgage, their own
that'd be-
insurance.
But they
That'd be
could be renters. We're not specifying that. Renters are not homeowners.
Well, this ordinance isn't about renters or homeowners. Any single person, anywhere, whether it's an existing home or it's new construction, can rent their home out, and you can't prevent that. So this is about the actual structures you're building for homeowners.
So homeowners, of home ownership in that case would be best case scenario. It could be a lot worse.
I'm not sure exactly what you're talking about. A builder is not going to build a duplex for themselves for the most part in a subdivision and then start renting them out. Developers do the infrastructure and they get the land set up and then they're out of there. And then the builders come in and they build the house and then they're out of there. And then they're selling it to people. They're selling it to homeowners. Now, if somebody buys a duplex, they may buy it and live in one side of it, for instance, for themselves, and rent the other side. But there's nothing in any ordinance in any community that can prevent somebody from renting their own home out, a single-family residence or a duplex. You can take single-family homes and turn them into two-family units and rent them out. This is simply about getting more units on the ground for people to live in.
So one number that I have is in Brown County, in the average home price, this goes back to some data. So just as a reference point, we began discussing this as a village board. The first time this came to the village board for discussion was May 5th, again on May 19th, again June 2nd, and again on June 16th, which gets us to today. Over that course of time, the average, it was designated or was mentioned, the average home price within Brown County is $327,000. The average price in Suamico is $485,000. The price of a home in Suamico is 48% higher than the cost of a home in Brown County. So those are just some numbers relevant to, I think, what you were trying to point out. Are there other questions?
Yeah, I have a couple, if you don't mind. I'm trying to get my head around what I consider the most important topic as it comes to the community, right? So as a board, we're obviously not land sellers. We're not developers, right? We're not here to sell land. Obviously, a community that doesn't grow becomes stagnant. And obviously, if a community grows too quickly, there can be problems there as well. I don't have a nice little euphemism for it, but there's other problems.
No, agreed.
So there should be a balance that happens.
Sure.
And I think that's the duty of the board. Planning and zoning did their job, right? They came through and they said, hey, let's do this, right? They met with you as experts. They met with, so I'm sorry, again, forgive me, who do you represent?
The Realtors Association for
Realtors
Northeast
Association,
Wisconsin.
okay. And you're paid for, or you're employed by the
Yes.
Realtors Association? So you essentially go around the community sort of almost as a lobbyist?
Kind
Would that
of,
be fair?
yeah.
Okay.
My expertise is more in land use and development and things of that nature, so that's what I spend the majority
And
of my
that's
time
great.
on.
So planning and zoning went through the effort to reach out to the Realtor Association. They got the Realtor's opinion. They talked with, I read through the minutes, right? You talked to developers, you talked to builders. But I feel like as our job as a board is to take that information and understand that there was maybe a little bit of, what's the word I'm trying to, tunnel vision isn't the right word, but when you only hear from one perspective.
Bias.
Bias? I hate to use the word bias.
That's
but
okay.
Only one perspective, right, to enjoy. So, and that's where it comes to the board now, right? So as the board, we're like, okay, well, we also have a survey of Suamico. And if you throw that survey, which I did, into Chat GPT, or is it GTP? I can never keep it straight. I asked the survey several questions, right? You know, what would Suamico residents feel about this? Because that's who elected us. That's who we represent. Another thing, you know, they really like nice-sized lots, period. And they also don't like high taxes. So there's a conflict there, right? So in that perspective, so my question is then, if we have a goal, for me, the most important goal is to try to, if we can, crack the nut of making housing affordable to middle-class America, right? And that's just my bias. So that's going to be my perspective, right? So the goal of 350,000, you said, is not achievable.
I don't know if it's necessary. I said it's very difficult. So
Oh,
we are seeing some builders being able to put up $350,000 homes when a couple of things are met. First of all, it depends on the community, so many factors. The community, how much
And
the
that's
developer had to pay for the land, which dictates the price of the lot, the infrastructure. Are they in a community that allows them to build a little bit smaller home? All of those things come together. But if all of the stars align, then yes, they can put up a $350,000
So,
home.
for instance, so do you believe it's possible? Because I'm sure you met with the planning and zoning, you understand our community very well. A lot of the things I heard you say sounded generic, generalized, like generalized to the state, but Suamico specific. Is it achievable to hit $350,000 for Suamico?
Is it all right with you? I'm gonna pause for a minute. I'm gonna look at our developers and builders and ask them that, but I think you raised a couple of points. One being, yes, obviously you want to be cautious of getting one-sided information or skewed information. I would encourage all of you, our association, the Builders Association, has partnered with the Wisconsin Counties Association, the League of Municipalities. They have created an entire organization, a website. The league has it on their website. They are doing videos. They are producing sample ordinances. They are giving as much information to their communities about the desperate need to address the housing crisis and how to do that through their ordinances. So you don't have to take it from the Realtors Association. Your own organization is doing heavy lifting, trying to help to educate its member communities on what they need to do. So you can find information that comes from your people there.
Okay, which organization?
The League of Municipalities.
Very good.
So that would be a great source where they have all kinds of information, very similar to what I spoke about here, provided for the members. The other thing too is building too fast or growing too fast. I completely understand your point on that. I don't think that's going to be a problem for Suamico. If I'm being quite honest with you, I'm not sure these zoning changes are going to bring the development that you need, especially to meet your current issues with property tax levy. But if these changes are able to give you even some growth, great. I'm not so sure it is. So I don't think you making these changes and growing too fast is going to be
Okay.
a problem.
For Suamico in particular, then, can you tell me, how many of the RS1 has changed? How many of those lots would have to build a year in
Yep.
order to keep us at the sweet spot?
I don't know, have you guys done you haven't done a really in-depth housing study yet. One thing,
So,
hold on one second. So, Pat, Stacy, can they get a $350,000 home here with these changes?
You'll have to come up to the mic. It's a public hearing, so we'll.
and not this
have you
mic.
Sign in
that-
for the record.
Pat Castor with River City Realtors. I do land development and work with builders to build out those developments. We worked for about 3 years to try to get that smaller house, the $350,000 house. We were able to do it. We do, it's 1,396 square feet. It's 1.5 baths, a 2-stall garage. Of course, it has a full basement, and they usually put an egress window in that basement so that if somebody wants to finish that off for additional housing, they can. But we did it in a mixed-use subdivision where we were able to do smaller lots, and then we gradually went up to, I think our highest is 85 foot, but our smallest is about 75. And in there, we also have 0 lot lines, which are 50 feet each side. And we have apartments, and we have condos. And actually, it's not condos, it's an HOA, so people can live there, and they own their lot and their house, but they pay an association fee for lawn care and snow removal. That allowed, actually, the community was very happy when we did it, because it allows for people of all ages to live in the same community, and you could actually start out renting, end up owning a home, and then retire there. So it turned out very well, but that's the only way that we were able to get the smaller price ranges, the starter point, that we used to be able to do like nothing, but now it's almost impossible. You have to really work on it in order to
Can
get
I
it.
ask you a follow-up question really quickly?
Yeah.
So what's the footprint of that house?
It's 1,396 square
That's the
feet.
square foot, but what was like the footprint? Is it
Two-story.
It's a ranch
two-story?
It's a ranch.
It's a ranch, okay.
with a
so-
two-stall garage.
So I
yeah.
could just kind of work out an idea, okay?
One thing I just want to clarify, and I should have done this earlier, is talking about the price of new construction is very important, so you kind of get a feel for what developers and builders are confronting. But the most important point here is that the reason that we are having an affordability crisis is because of a lack of inventory, because we've been underbuilding every home. And I know people get frustrated. I was at a hearing for a developer. Well, these aren't going to be affordable units. I'm like, yes, but it will help with affordability because you're getting more inventory out there, which inevitably is going to lower the price of existing homes that enter the market and stop the bidding wars. Every new rooftop you put out there helps with affordability, regardless of the price range of the home. Now, if we can actually build homes at lower price points for people, that's what we're aiming for. But please don't misunderstand me. We are in an enormous deficit of under construction. The only way we're going to address that and bring the price points down for all housing, including existing inventory, is by increasing inventory, supply and demand.
Yeah, and that makes sense. Supply and demand makes sense to me. So yeah, 14,000 was the pre-life we lived in. 4,000 is the now life we live in. That sounds like 1,000 short, and that's across Wisconsin, right?
How do I know how many million we're short across
So,
Wisconsin?
no, just, those are numbers you gave earlier, the lots available.
Yes,
So-
so yes, we're, 4,000 is about what we've been producing every
Okay.
year.
So-
And, you know, I don't have the exact numbers of new lot construction for Green Bay, or for Brown County, but Pat has it memorized.
Well, that's really not the key for me. The key for me is that in order to fix that number, to get back to the 14,000 number, that's 10,000 lots, obviously, not something Suamico can support, obviously. But there should be a number in there that would be sort of, call it Suamico's fair share,
Yeah.
right, to get there. And that's yearly, right? So what I'm curious about is what that number would be for Suamico. What's the target?
Well, how old is your comp plan right now?
2016,
Okay.
so we're updating it next year.
Yeah, so every community, when they do their comp plan, has their housing element, and that usually gives them some indication. We have a lot of communities across the state, including Northeast Wisconsin, that have paid consultants a lot of money to do very, very in-depth housing studies to give them a much more specific idea, not just even how many units we have, but what types and which specific populations are in most need and where do we put them in. So I know you're not at that point right now.
No, we did discuss that. I mean, that was something that was actually discussed among the board. We did have the option, and it was shared with us, the housing study that DePere did at a cost of $36,000.
I think it was 50,000.
$50,000. It was very expensive, and it was the consensus of the board when that discussion was had many weeks ago now, that wasn't necessarily something that we needed to do. But yes, I agree, a great plan, I mean, great data, but very expensive.
One of the things, if I could, 3 years ago, I did a subdivision, and every year after that, I did one right next to that same subdivision. And the cost of lot improvements is tripled from 3 years ago till now. So the only way that we can lower the price of the lot cost is to do variable lot sizes and try to get it done that way.
So the 35,000 that I saw in the planning and zoning minutes, is that the current cost or was that the old cost?
That would
That's
be,
for a 100-foot lot.
that's about 3 years ago.
Oh, okay. All right.
Because right now, the subdivision that we have, actually, well, it's in Howard, but I think your improvements are requiring about the same things that Howard does. And the first subdivision I did, we were selling lots for $56,000 apiece. So we were improving them for about 30 plus your land platting and carrying costs. The last one that we did, our prices had to be higher because our lot costs were higher than what we sold the first subdivision for. So now our lots are 75 and up for the same lot, just because the improvement cost is so high.
Okay.
Mixing the use, so like you had mentioned before, that's a plan, right? So it reminds me of when I would design assisted living facilities, you have an age in place, so you would go in, right? So in this scenario, you're kind of talking a similar concept, where you come in as a renter, and then when you build up your wealth, then you can maybe buy a smaller home, and then you can sell that to the next renter, get your equity, and then keep on going up, right? That's the basic theory?
If it works, yeah. that
Yeah,
is-
right, in theory.
Yeah.
That's the theory, right?
The one thing you have to remember, most people start out as renters.
Yes.
And
I would
so
agree.
your kids cannot live in Suamico to begin with because there's no place for them to start. And this would give them that starting point.
If it's planned, and that's my thing, is that we have to plan it, we have to think about it, we have to make an approach and have an approach that makes sense. And at that point, then, we know that we're doing right for not only, we're doing right for both people that want to come into Suamico, but as members of the board, we need to do right by the people that are in Suamico, right? They're the, that's who we represent. So, municipal buildings, 13, so I thank you for that hope on the $350,000 house.
You
That's-
can do it.
That's hope, that's
Yeah.
good news.
And, you know, you're not doing granite or
Oh, no, yeah.
things like that.
Well,
Basic house.
You're doing a
The first
basic
house I lived in didn't have granite either,
And they're very nice.
yeah, so.
So, and one thing, I keep a record of the lots that are developed. And when I first started in this business, Suamico was one of the highest producers. It was Suamico, Howard, and De Pere that were always in a race every year to see who would produce the most lots, who would have the most sales. Right now, well, at that time, we had about 864 lots in Brown County in a given year. That was the minimum that we usually had. Right now, we have about 260, and that includes all the communities in Brown County. And Suamico always, like I said, was one of the top three. There, I think we have them in MLS, there might be 18 lots in Suamico that are listed for
Surprised
sale.
there's that many.
Did you say 864 and 264? I'm sorry, I was trying to write this down quickly.
Oh.
The number of lots that were there during the heyday was what?
864.
864.
That's what I thought, and then 264 is what we have now?
And I have charts of those. I can send them to Steve
With
so that you would have them.
And also, one thing to remember is when they were in that race for those lots, a lot of the people that are going to show up and say they don't want all of this housing in Suamico were those people. And then the people before them were at the public hearing saying, we don't want all those people coming here. There's never been an instance where you probably had a community that said, let's open our doors and welcome new citizens. It's always been, we've got ours, now let's pull the drawbridge up. It's just.
No, I think there's good
inevitable.
news, because so far, everyone who's spoken, no one has taken that position.
Yes.
Well, but you're gonna get it.
Oh,
I think
maybe,
you all
maybe
know,
not.
and-
It depends on how
Well,
we handle it,
there's-
right? If we
we-
plan it carefully, I don't think we're gonna have to worry about that. Because I think the citizens understand that there's an inherent conflict. We want lower taxes. We don't want more homes. Those two can't coincide unless we actually do like a cost reduction effort in the village to try to push those taxes down, which was one of the things, I have several questions from constituents, that was one of them.
Were there
I
additional
rest.
questions?
I rest.
Thank you. Are there additional questions for our guests? Anyone? I appreciate your time.
I would just like to say one thing.
Sure.
I've been a developer since I started in business, and my father was before me, and we did development in most every community in Brown County. I had a development that I was going to do in Suamico that never came to fruition, and I walked out of Suamico, and I never came back. This ordinance, I wanted to just, my opinion is, this is a step in the right direction, and it would help get your community back in the, in the market with everybody else. And it would make your community better. And yes, there would be some expenses, but there would also be more citizens, more property owners to help pay those expenses. So just my 2 cents.
Thank you. All right, thank you both very much. Floor is open for anyone else who would like to speak. Hello.
Hi, my name's Pam Sylvester, 1324 Cardinal Lane. I work for the Brown County Home Builders Association, but before I go down that route, personally, I just wanted to share a story with you. I have a twin sister who I have been recruiting to come to the area for 10 years since we graduated college. We went to college here, and she wasn't able to find a job, so she ended up northern Milwaukee area. And Howard Suamico School District had some openings, and she finally got a job, so I'm getting her back up here. So she's going to work at one of your elementary schools, and she can't live in your municipality. Those are the types of people that are going to rent and want to continue to build wealth in your community to teach your kids and your grandkids. So I want you guys to keep that in mind. It's very real. Wearing my Brown County Home Builders Association hat, I did send out a letter of support that our board of directors wanted to send. I just want to say thank you to your staff. You have a very intelligent staff that you pay. So I think your dollar is getting the good bang for your buck there for doing this hard work that you have hired them to do. And so I wanted to say that our association appreciates all the work that you guys have done on this, for listening to us at your meetings and coming to our association to meet with us. Our members are your neighbors as well. They're the builders, they're the plumbers, your electricians, your carpet installers, your insurance agents, mortgage, everything under the sun. We represent them. So I don't want to say that I'm lobbying, because unfortunately, I don't get paid to lobby, but I will share their perspectives, as not everyone is able to be here. That made me want to just point out that I know you have a concern about residents and their viewpoints, and I wanted to, I'm so happy that we had a couple of our members show up today, because your residents have that same opportunity at every public meeting you have, if they feel so strongly, which we do, and we want to support you guys on this. Am I able to ask questions to your staff for clarification?
Yes.
I'm just, because you, I think you're hitting the nail on the head about planning. Your comp plan that you're going to be doing next year will address what residential zoning code, which districts will be where, correct?
You'll create a future land use map that you'll go through a process of, okay, these are the zoning classifications that we have in our zoning code. Here's a map of the future, whatever the future is to you, and then you can start making decisions about where R2, where R3 should or could go if that's passed.
Yeah, so I think that's important to remember, that your R2, your duplexes, or your R3 apartment buildings are not just going to be slapped in between two houses that currently exist without thought-out plans for the future. I understand it's great to have big lot sizes, and some people are able to afford that. But someone like me, like Jen mentioned, how 38 is where you're looking to buy your first home nowadays. If I wasn't lucky enough to have a dual income, I wouldn't have a home, I'd still be renting, and I think I have a good job that should be able to pay for a house. I don't think it's fair to say that people who rent are going to bring any type of tax base down or more crime to the neighborhood, because that's, I think I'm an outstanding citizen and would happily help with any type of boards and commissions, and which I do now. And so I don't want there to be a negative stigma on people who will be in those multifamily units, because you guys do have them and they're very nice. And my sister, who's going to teach in your district, can't live there because it's too expensive with the salary your school district pays them.
Even the apartments? The
Correct.
apartments are-
It's too much.
Our apartments are multifamily,
They're very nice,
they're very nice, but they are somewhat pricey.
very expensive.
Are you a Suamico resident?
No,
Okay.
Howard resident? So, do you have students who go to the school district or attend the school? Not yet?
just a daycare.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
Is she done?
I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
if you have any
okay.
questions for me with the home
didn't mean to cut you
builder's
off, thank you.
perspective or my personal perspective, I'm happy to share.
Okay.
I just want to emphasize something, like, I don't know that I've heard anyone here on the board say that apartments equal crime.
No, but it comes up in other municipal
But it
meetings.
hasn't come up here, and I just
Right.
want to make that clear, that I have yet to hear that. Now, I have heard more people means more police, which is obvious, right?
Yeah,
So, you know, and that's the, I think the side of that coin is that we already pay like, what, 1.4 million a year or something like that to Brown County to have police. And if we continue to expand, that's going to go up because we're going to need more police officers, right? So it's not that people who live in apartments are all criminals. That's not what we're saying at all. It's just
Right.
more of the bigger picture.
That reference has been made multiple times by board members.
But not here tonight.
Not,
So,
well, not very specifically, but it was
okay,
mentioned.
okay.
And
Yeah,
has
I-
been
as-
mentioned specifically in the past.
my experience in going to meetings with municipalities and the residents that do attend, it has been said, and that's why
very
I brought it
quickly,
up.
Because there is a picture.
I just want to clarify one point on this, right? And this is why I'm hitting this a little bit hard right now. I don't think we should be sitting up here as board members right now and thinking that, you know, we are so clean, our hands are clean without making these accusations. Those accusations have been made, and they have been danced around before. The accusations of bias have been made. There have been a lot of, and the reason I bring these up is accusations are opinions, and everybody's allowed to opinions, and you can certainly have them. And you get that right to have that opinion, but it's an opinion, and until it's backed up by facts and data, it's not a reality. It's just an opinion. So I think we need to be careful here, and we need to acknowledge that there are opinions that have been expressed, which is just fine, but it's not that they never have been. They have been.
Okay, I just haven't heard of it.
Would you deny that more people need more sidewalks, more schools, more neighborhood parks, 24-hour fire, more police, more DPW, leaf pickup, signs, roundabouts, stoplights, libraries, animal control, public transit?
Does
Do more
Suamico have
people-
public transit?
No.
No,
No.
and until the Village of Howard has it, you'll never see it.
Also,
So I don't think that should be a concern.
More people would create that concern. That's a fact. I mean, that's not,
More people
It's
also
not
bring in more revenue,
bias.
which is also a fact.
well, they're going to have to bring in a lot more to pay for all
But
this.
we can talk about that after the public hearing if you want, because we've gone over those numbers, and I happened to make I anticipated this argument, and I happened to make some notes from previous presentations that were made here that specifically point out those dollars in a facts and data manner.
I don't have any other points. I just want to say thank you for taking the time to go through this and actually look at it, because that's a step in the right direction for our members.
you're welcome.
Okay. Who else would like to come forward and speak? Anyone else? Public hearing. This is your moment. Anyone going once, going twice? Okay, so, Do we have to end the public hearing officially to go
Yeah,
on to
just
item 7B?
procedurally, I would recommend that you would close the public hearing, then you
Okay.
move on to 7B.
Okay, may I have a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Thank you. Trustee Romas has offered a motion to close the public hearing. Is there a second?
Second.
And I have a second from trustee Eckert. Thank you. This moves us on to item 7B. Item 7B this evening is ordinance 2025-05, amending section 18.05, establishment of zones, and 18.09, RS residential sewer zoning. Administrator Dux.
Thank you. To begin with, the only major change between RS as it exists today and the RS1 is going to be the lot size. As far as if you, this doesn't rezone a single piece of property to RS2 or RS3. That's something to be taken up in the future to better see where we're going to serve those areas best, land that might be more suitable for that type of development because it's not cost effective to do it in single-family homes, or there's just a need. To leave it as it exists and create 4 different zones to create that buffer, typically you're going to develop from an existing established area out into undeveloped areas. Well, if you've got a 40-acre buffer to the current RS development, and we've done nothing to develop any of that which is out there in the last 10 years, at least 8 years. When did Chambers went in 18?
1920.
That's the only thing we've done since 2008, is one substantial subdivision in sewer and water development. So if they won't come here on the 100-foot lots, how's the next 40 adjacent to the vacant 40 ever going to get services? Because you're not going to pull the services across to a vacant 40-acre field. That's the one issue I see with the buffers. I don't think we're changing anything else in the code that would substantially affect those existing single-family homes that are in there. How much money did we just allocate for a new well and a water tower? How are we going to pay for that if we don't do development? When we put the interceptor into Green Bay Met and vacated the existing sanitary system we had goals of a lot more homes that have been built since that 2005-ish timeframe. It hasn't happened because number one, you had the 08 collapse, which really hurt everybody. And it did shy some of our people away from development. This is just the tool. This isn't gonna automatically create development. We have areas that need sewer in the ground in order to be developed. If you can't afford to put the sewer in the ground because we're only building 30 homes a year and it's gonna take 20 years to pay for that pipe, so we won't invest in the pipe, then again, why did we invest in a water tower and a well? Because if we can't provide sewer, we're not gonna put that water tower and well to use. It's all a balancing act, and we're just trying to at least get to the point where there's the possibility of discussing the areas that could develop, how they could develop, and now can we talk about putting sewer in the ground to actually serve these areas, or are we gonna let it just trickle down at the current rate, which isn't happening. We have 2 more lots in the original land developer's hands. I think I have 12 vacant lots in the sewer and water area. At least 5 of those lots are owned by the adjacent property owner with a home already on the property, so they're using it as one lot. If they're not on the market, we're not building houses on there. We're down 38% from last year, year-to-date, on new homes in the RS zoning. Now, your rural is taken off, but that's substantial, and I don't anticipate anything coming forward because I have nowhere to build the homes. So that's why this is in front of you tonight.
Can I just ask one quick question? I just wasn't sure I heard you correctly. Could you go back over the lots available, and specifically, are they currently lots that are like up for sale and available, or land, like you would put a lot in land that was zoned as such? So the numbers you gave. Yeah,
I believe there are 12 vacant lots currently available for new single-family homes.
Okay,
5 of those lots are owned by adjacent property owners and are being maintained as part of their home lot. So that they're not open for sale today. I have a couple of the vacant ones, one in Moose Creek and one in Bayport Heights. Actually, I think there's 2 in Moose Creek.
so they're already in like
That,
platted,
that are platted, yes. This is 12 platted lots left.
but we would have an opportunity to have a lot more lots once we plat the land that might be sold for development. That's the whole point of this.
That's the whole point of this, is to make it feasible for a developer to come in and want to plat. They don't want to plat because they can't make money. You know, so they're just not gonna come here. If you don't give them the opportunity to be profitable, it's just not gonna happen. In the others, I mean, we got people that own land that want to develop, but we don't have pipe in the ground to get to them. And if we don't provide the opportunity for Public Works and Utility to see that it's an option to even finance putting that pipe in the ground, because we're going to get the development to pay for it, again, we're going nowhere. And that's the whole point of this, is where do we want this community to be? How are we gonna pay for that well? How are we gonna pay for that water tower? Why are we trying to pay for it if we don't want to develop? I'm not saying to bring in 200 homes a year. I don't think that's a good option either, but more than 15? Again, you're not gonna pay for that sewer in the ground if you can't get, 65, 70 homes a year on average.
It's important to emphasize that this is a process. So the changes that were suggested and discussed with regard to RS1, RS2, and RS3, going from RS1, was the first step in the process. Those are the changes that are suggested before us this evening. The things when we're talking about where do multifamily go, where do duplexes go, et cetera, those are all developments to come in the future. Once we would potentially make these changes, that sends a signal out to the world, right? That says, okay, we're interested in looking at business again. We've modified to allow you to potentially be more successful. Come take a look at us. That's what it is. And then we go from there. The bigger piece of this is the comprehensive plan. Having either deciding to make these changes or not making these changes, that is very formative going forward with our comprehensive plan. So that's why this is before us. The next piece of this, depending on either direction we go, is to sit down with Public Works, and as we've done in the past. When we talked about who have we talked to about this, we have had conversations, obviously, with some of the folks here tonight, but also had conversations, if you'll remember, a joint meeting with Public Works, where we said, where do you see growth being? Where do you see growth in the sewer and water area? So I just wanted to emphasize, this is a first step in really in a process. Going forward. I'll conclude just with this because I did have these numbers prepared. When we looked as an example at Chambers Hill, for example, the Chambers Hill was set up for 88 lots. And again, we had this as part of the presentation that was shared with us, but I will refresh anyone's memory who may have forgotten this. Chambers Hill example, current was 88 lots. Fully developed cost on those or value of those was $36 million. Under the new designation for R1, that development would have had 125 lots. There would have been a 30% increase in the value of those, $51,136,000, an additional $15 million that would have come to take care of infrastructure services, all of those type of things here in the village of Suamico. That's a 42% increase. So in not only in the number of lots, but 42% increase in the amount of revenue that would have come to the village to take care of fire, police, sidewalks, whatever the case may be. That's just one example. Unfortunately, it's the only example that we have in the last 5 years. or longer of that. So, you know, that's, when we talk about the additional costs and the cost to school districts, you know, we need to be cooperative with the school district, but that's not our bailiwick, right? The school district has to manage their own business. Thank goodness we have a school district that's growing. As you've heard, many of the school districts are not. Look at Green Bay. I don't think we want to be in that position. So there's just a number to help funnel the discussion. Next.
So I have a question. Administrator Caker, a couple months ago, you sent an email out to the village board members on the enrollment in the school district. Can you share that information?
Yeah, that was just me being interested in some numbers, and the school district is required to report to the state their enrollment. I think it's called like a September snapshot. So back in 2018, their total enrollment was 7,009 students, and then their September headcount in 2023 was 7,001. So it actually decreased by 8 students over those 5 years. That was all the information that I shared.
So based on that information, at least in my opinion, I mean, I don't think we have to worry about, I mean, the numbers are flat already over 7 years. They've been pretty consistent. So I don't see that all of a sudden we're going to have a huge spike in hundreds and hundreds of kids. And over this time period, Howard, who was in the school district, has done multiple multifamily things. So that hasn't even spiked it.
Yeah, the only thing on that.
Somebody from school board is here.
The only thing on that may be affecting those numbers is the non-resident enrollment may have gone down as the resident enrollment has gone up. So that is a point in time, but without knowing their exact fact, we don't know if they've lost, 500 non-residents to 500 actual residents, because I know it's getting harder to get into Howard Suamico as a non-resident. But, yeah, unless your member of the school board has better information on that, it's hard to use that. I mean, they have the space up until now anyway, because they were able to take non-residents, but, yeah, we haven't looked at that.
Can we open up the floor to a school board member? Motion?
If she wants.
If you want to make a motion, go ahead, make a motion.
I make that motion.
I'll second.
There's a motion on the floor to reopen the floor up for discussion from a school board member, and that motion has been made by trustee Eckert and seconded by trustee Romas. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Nay? The motion carries 6-1. Welcome. Provide your name and address.
Amy Rubright, 2274 Cathedral Forest Drive, Suamico. So I just want to be careful how I speak because I don't want to speak on behalf of the board. But I do know that before I was elected to the board the first time around, they did cap enrollment. So if you were out of the district, you couldn't get in after a certain period in time. So we have seen the numbers drop over the last few years because that is starting to play out across the board. So that might, I don't have actual information in front of me, I wasn't prepared for that, but if you reach out to the district, they can give you that information, so you can see where we let the students in at, and I think it's at maybe kindergarten and 4K, and at the high school level. We only have so many seats open for our regular students.
So you've capped open enrollment.
Correct, because that's something during the last referendum that they told the community that they would have smaller class sizes in order to do that. That was part of the referendum.
Yes, and I remember that.
Yeah, so I just wanted, that might reflect the data a little bit because we're starting to see that over the last few years. And we just got some additional information about class sizes and where we sit at the different schools. And we're in the really early stages of looking at that information right now.
Okay.
I just have, is it okay if I ask a question?
By all means.
Has the school district talked to the village of Howard, saying, hey, you're building too much, slow down?
I am not privy to those conversations if that's happening, so I can't answer that question for you.
Okay.
Sounds like a good question for a linkage meeting.
But we have had linkages, so we do have Howard and Suamico show up at those meetings. I don't know that we've necessarily talked much about building at them, but we're always up for another.
Perhaps a building administrator could call a village administrator or vice versa.
I was just curious.
Yeah. Other questions for Board Member Rubright?
I don't know if this is something you can even predict, but what's it looking like have you guys done any forecasting that you can share that shows, are you looking at a problem with having to build more already? Or is this something that's kind of settling just with the open enrollment? Or, Mike, I just don't know, and I can't really share that right now because I'm not sure.
I don't know that
Fair enough.
I can really share that now, more
That's
than
fine.
what we've talked about in our meetings. There are schools in our area that are filled, so we are going to have to look at doing something. And I know we own some property out in Howard, but from my understanding, we don't own any property in Suamico.
Okay,
But I believe there is some space at Bay Harbor and Suamico, but I don't know how much.
okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Otherwise, we'll entertain a motion to release Board Member Rubright.
Motion to release.
So
Got a
seconded.
motion from Trustee Ecker to release Board Member Rubright and a second from Trustee McKeefery. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries 7-0. Thank you. Board Member Rubright, much appreciated. All right, back to discussion.
So if I may?
Please.
So, thank you, zoning administrator Dunks, for your input earlier. You mentioned a couple of words, typically, things like that. And I understand that because you don't know the future, right? None of us do. And very much like when the Planning and Zoning Commission came to this board and asked for more tools, that's why I want the tool put back into this to allow the people that are going to be on this comprehensive plan committee to make decisions and not be cornered. If we don't have that tool in there, they may find some of those areas where it does require, in order to meet that mixed-use feel, a classic Suamico lot. That is my biggest concern, that what we're doing is we're limiting the comprehensive plan committee from being able to do the best job they can do by cornering them with an ordinance. I rest.
Okay. Next. Who would like to be next? All right, if no one else wants to jump in, I'll give you, this is what I have, the last piece that I have. So really, the issue is here before us, and the reason that this all started so many months ago was discussions with regard to levy, right? Levy can only be increased by a percentage of new construction. Typically, that's 1.36%. Basically, that allows a maximum, correct me if I have this wrong, village administrator, but $62,500 max allowed increase in the year 26, 27, and 28. Is that correct?
It's a very nuanced statement, but
Well,
that's
then I-
that's the maximum debt service allowable rate.
Okay, based on the rate.
So basically, you can increase your levy by 62,500 per year if that's the number you choose over the next 3 years before you run into that issue where you're now borrowing for more money than your debt
there you go.
service allows for.
So with the limits on the levy that are placed on us and the low level of new construction that we have, we've got a couple of options to continue to finance the village. We can finance the village through borrowing. We can finance the village through referendums. Or we can finance the village through a reduction in services. So those are the options that we have unless we decide that we're going to do something to try to facilitate growth in this community. Why would we facilitate growth? To eliminate borrowing, which many of us on this board, and those of us, those who have joined even recently, have worked very hard to reduce the level of borrowing. I don't need to remind you that at one point, I think 46% of the dollars that we brought into this village went towards paying off debt. maybe it was 42%, was one of those. That was in 2010. It's now at 26%, perhaps less.
Oh, it's down to 21-ish?
21%. 21% now of taxpayer money goes to paying towards debt, not 42% unless we want to start borrowing again. So that's another reason. Probably one of the biggest reasons, and Trustee Eckert, you'll appreciate this, this may be one of the few times that we can find a place where we agree, water utility support, right? We have talked about supporting the water utility on this village board since I joined in 2010. And we've always come to loggerheads that there's nothing we can do, there's nothing we can do, and their rates just continue to increase. The only way that we can assist the folks who have been paying for that water utility, for the Cadillac water utility, is to get more people to drive in the Cadillac and to use the Cadillac, and that only comes with development. So this is our opportunity to stop paying lip service to how we want to support the water utility and actually do something about it. Wow, imagine that. Wouldn't that be unique? And increased costs of services. So we know that when you look at the consumer price index, we know that the cost of everything that we buy in this world goes up between 2 and 3%, sometimes 8 and 9%. Let's hope we don't revisit that again. So we know the cost of every village service that we provide is going to go up 3%. How are we going to sustain that without new growth? Housing, and all of the other reasons that were discussed, it's talking about creating housing that's affordable so that teachers can live here, police can live here, nurses can live here, community members who are invested in the community in their work lives can be, addressing this in their personal lives as well. Those are the reasons we have to do this. And why do we do this? Because we want to do right. I heard it mentioned here tonight. We need to do what's right for all of those in Suamico, for as many as possible. We're never going to get 100% agreement. There's always going to be opinions. But we need to do as much right as we possibly can. And I think making these changes, and be very careful about this, and it was mentioned here, I think, as well. I'm not entirely sure that even these changes is going to make a whole big difference in Suamico. I don't think you're going to have people beating down our doors to build out here and do things, because quite frankly, if you look at what's being done in Lawrence, if you look at what's being done in Hobart, if you look at what's done in Howard and De Pere, they're doing what we haven't been doing for a very long time, and they're doing it much, much better. So I don't know that this is going to become this really super cool. It is for me, but all we can do is try. If we don't try, then it's like Ben Franklin said, right? I think it was Ben Franklin who said, what's the definition?
Or Einstein, maybe?
What's the definition of stupidity? Doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. That's what's ahead of us. That's why we have this before us. The control for all of this remains in the board, changes nothing for anybody who's already built out here. When we start talking about multifamily and duplexes and all of those other configurations, that's something that's going to be before the board, and we're going to have to make that decision and revisit this again. So that's this person's take on what we have before us.
No,
Go ahead.
for the 50 millionth time, I will say that I'm fine with the R1. I got a problem with R2 and R3. And I will say for the 50 millionth time, we are not Howard, nor should we be.
May I ask you a question?
Sure.
About everything you just said? So what does adding that tether to the existing zoning do that corrupts anything that you just talked about?
Does it corrupt it? I don't think it corrupts it. I think it creates, to use a word that was used by the administrator, it creates a veiled nuance of something. Are we serious about what we're doing in terms of changing the direction? Or are we looking for a way to say no?
I see, okay.
And I think that was my concern.
So if I may, I feel that the board in general looks at this as we need to have the plan in place, and we need the tools to get the plan there, in general. So why would we want to remove a tool that has worked? Maybe now we feel it didn't work so great for some, but why would we want to remove a tool that the Comprehensive Plan Committee may find useful? is it just to make it not available to them? So that if they did find areas, which could happen typically, right? Why would we put ourselves in that committee in a spot where they're forced to follow a zoning area that they don't want to follow? And that's gonna show up. We have a large community, we have a lot of areas, there's gonna be areas where people can look at that and go, you know what? What we really ought to do is we should have the classic lots here, and then it doesn't have to be an entire 40 acres, right? It could just be an area of that, with a comprehensive plan put together, and then zone the interior RS2 or RS1. So I don't understand what this desire is to not let the comprehensive plan committee have this ability, besides just the potential fear that what they'll do, which doesn't, well, it may happen, I mean, anything's possible, what they may do is go, oh, good, we'll just do everything that way, right? I feel like what we're doing is we're tying their hands, and I don't, everything that's said tonight, apartments are, you know, what people want apartments, people want multifamily, we have this levy issue that may or may not be a problem, all these things may or may not be true. I'm not going to argue one way or the other, but the reality is that having that piece in the ordinance doesn't do anything to stop those things from happening. It just allows that comprehensive plan committee the ability to be agile when they make this plan. And what we could do is we could set up, you know, as part of that plan, we could have areas that say, you know what, this is RS2, here you go. Or RS1 or RS3, whatever. But then that becomes a community-involved thing like you were talking about, right? Where we haven't, this is the beginning of a process. So why at the beginning of the process do we want to tie their hands from being able to do what they think is right as they exercise their authority? That's what I don't understand.
Well, I think your comprehensive plan is going to address areas that should remain in single-family residential. They're going to address areas for more dense population. They're not going to get into which areas should have what type of zoning on them. They're just going to, it's a general land use. It's never been specific to the actual type of zoning. It may say mixed use, which would allow for commercial or the denser multifamily. It may say only the denser, you know, depending on where it is, you know, if we're talking around, you know. the
So
top-
where then in the process is it determined that a certain piece of property is going to be RS1, 2, or 3? The process you've been talking about.
If it's currently zoned RS today, it remains RS1. It would be in the rezone process, which needs to be substantially compliant with your comprehensive plan, which is gonna say it can be denser use, it can be mixed use. You know, there are some areas that would be good to mix both commercial use and the multifamily. There's other areas that you may only have the multifamily and then move up to the semi-dense and then the single-family residential.
Yeah.
And all that rezoning goes through, first of all, it goes through planning and zoning, a recommendation is made to the board, and the board makes final approval on the rezoning of, you know, if something was to go from RS1 to RS2 or RS3.
And that all process, right?
Right.
That's common stuff. What is the desire to remove the tool?
I don't see from my perspective, I don't see RS as a tool anymore. RS1 seems to effectively offer the same tool. You can build a lot, you can have a larger lot than 70 linear feet, but you can't have smaller in RS1. So our current RS says 100 linear feet. So if anybody wants 100 linear foot lot, they can go ahead and they can build on that. They don't have to come to the village board and look for, or planning and zoning, and look for a PDD on it, a PDD amendment. To me, that's the issue. You know, when we talk about the current RS designation, over the number of years, and Steve probably doesn't have, maybe he does have these numbers off the top of his head. If you look at the number of dwellings that were built on an RS lot without a PDD, they're minimal. Almost everything that has come through you know, planning and zoning and the village board over the last, at least the last 5 years, has been a preferred development district.
Planned development.
Planned development district.
It's hard to remember.
So it's, there's a lot of PD, a lot of acronyms. The point is, I think what you have is what we need to get our hands around and come to grips with is the RS designation as it was is an anachronism. And we need to get with, we need to change that. It has been ineffectual. It's not brought in any development. And in fact, it's cost the village more money because we've had to do the planned development district
Yeah,
hearings.
and that's why planning and zoning came to us and asked for more tools.
That was one of the reasons,
Oh,
yes.
Right? And what I'm saying is that more tools is okay, but you have to have a tool that tethers you to the past. Otherwise, when that does pop up, you're not gonna be able to.
And the RS1 is still that same tool, they just took it and removed some of the rust and cleaned it up and sharpened it.
And made it 70-foot wide lots.
Minimum.
Yeah, well, minimum, but that's, if you have I mean, if you're looking to do the goal, right, and the goal is to provide an opportunity to build the lowest price possible home, then you are not gonna exceed that minimum.
I don't think that's our goal, to build the lowest possible cost of a home.
I probably shouldn't have said it that way.
Our,
If the
our
goal is-
goal is to bring development to this community that is sustainable. If, again, we're not, I understand, we are not here to make sure the developer makes money. But if the developer cannot make money, they're not coming here. And if they don't come here, how are you gonna pay for the services we already have?
Yeah.
The services that you're committed to with a $10 million well and tower project.
Well, again, that doesn't change by having the tethered lot size in there. That doesn't change. Because you're still gonna have your other three. Now you just have the one in case you need it. Another tool. Planning and zoning comes to us, they want tools, we say yes. Comprehensive plan group might want different tools. Planning and zoning, as you said before, typically think, there was one comment that was made at the planning and zoning meeting, that there's only a handful of times when that would be useful. Okay, well, now for the handful of times that's gonna be useful, you're not gonna have it. And it doesn't make sense to me to not do it, and I think I beat this dead horse.
No, the comprehensive plan, so in terms of when we are going down the road of planning, when we're doing the work with the comprehensive plan, would there be any, wouldn't it be possible for the greater minds involved in putting together that comprehensive plan to say, hey, you know, Trustee Romas brought up this idea of tethering RS, and we think that's a good idea, we'd like to have that back to the board. Could we make that change at that point? Based on a recommendation from committees meeting on the comprehensive plan?
You mean, could we go back to a 100-foot wide lot?
Could we add another designation as a tethered item?
I mean, you can always change your codes. I mean, there's nothing that ever,
See, that's my point. If we're talking about potentially needing something, we're gonna change our codes later.
I'm not-
Going through no. It's just saying, and that comes back as a whole process. Why don't we just do it now?
Because I don't think we need it. I mean, I don't
Okay.
think the majority of us think we need, I don't know.
And that's fine. That's fine.
I'm not getting the tethered piece of it. I think that it's covered because you can do 100 if you want to do 100, but 70 is the minimum. Right now, the way it stands is it's a minimum of 100. So anybody who wants to do 70 has to come through with a PDD, has to request a PDD. If we change this and it's 70, somebody who wants to do 60 has to come through with a request as a PDD. Somebody who wants to do 100 can just do 100. They don't need a PDD. So to me, it's already there. You can build 100, you can build 120, you can build 200. You can build whatever you want.
But the whole point you just went through was the stuff that's in the ordinance. So the idea is to remove the PDD. So you've accomplished that. Planning and zoning came to the board was supportive. So I'm saying that we should also make that accommodation going forward for the comprehensive plan committee, for ourselves, for planning and zoning, and put that back in. Because you're not losing the other items that you wanted. You're not losing, I mean, they're still there. So when you talk about, we had to go through the PDD, I get it. We all got it. It made sense, because every time we'd have a board meeting, we'd be looking at another PDD, you know, and it didn't make sense to do it that way. So now, we said, okay, you know what, we support you guys at planning and zoning, we're okay with these. But then, we don't have the ability now to go back and say, you know what, in these areas, no, that's not okay. A 70-foot lot is not acceptable here because of whatever reason. And there's a quote-unquote, handful of locations where that could be the case. So the headbutting that happens on this, I don't understand it. We're just trying to give more tools to comprehensive, to this board, and to planning and zoning. I don't understand why there's the fight.
I don't think it's a fight. What you're trying to offer is a tool. You're trying to offer a hammer. I don't see a hammer. I don't see another tool. What I see is a stick. I see a nothing. I see no reason for it. I don't understand the purpose for it. And I guess that's a fault of mine. I'm not following your train of thought, you know, your tethered element of it. But that's, you know, we're 7 votes. So I think
That's right.
if you have, you know, if you feel like there's a motion you'd like to offer to that, then I think we should put it up for a vote.
I just got one kind of closing comment to that is, there's been countless hours of planning and zoning reaching out to different resources, and they provided a plan to us that said that the market wants 70-foot lots. And there really isn't the need for a buffer zone. And so, I mean, hang on.
No, I thought you were
And so, I mean, that's their input, okay? And that's a group of people that have studied the market and will be valuable input along with many community members to the comprehensive plan. So my question is, it feels like we're talking about this buffer zone, but what I'm hearing from the experts, which are the planning and zoning team, is that they're saying there's really not room for that. There's not a market need for it. Now, if we get into the comprehensive plan and that changes, I don't think that there would be blind spots of people saying that let's protect this area for whatever reason. But we're kind of spinning on this topic right now, and I guess the question is that as a board member, I'm gonna listen to the planning and zoning and the inputs that they're giving us. And if we need to go out and define, you know, why we need a buffer zone, then we can push it back to them, but I think it's gonna come back with the same results. So I hear what you're saying. I think what's so important that's coming up is this comprehensive plan. What is the landscape gonna look like in this community? And these are just, to me, new tools that are gonna allow that comprehensive plan to be more effective. Without these changes, I don't know how that plan is gonna help us in any way. Yeah, please do.
So, and it wasn't that long ago that planning and zoning proposed the 100-foot. So back in April with that presentation, the RS1 was 100 feet. It
think that was
was very similar to what, no?
It was a mistake, yeah.
Oh, I'm
It was an
sorry.
error, yeah.
was an
And they
error.
addressed it then, but,
Right.
Oh,
yeah, it
Yeah.
was
Okay.
never proposed as 100 feet.
okay, so it was
Sorry
in
to
the,
interrupt.
it was in the, no, that's okay. If there's an error in what they did,
On
then that's good to
the
know.
table, the
Right,
table
yeah.
you're referring to, yeah.
Yeah, so what was the size that was supposed to have been on that table that we all saw?
70.
70, okay. So,
Yeah, good point. Thanks
yeah,
for
well, it
reminding
kind of made sense. I mean, if you're a visual person, you see that number, but you don't catch the comment or whatever, so. Anyway, so I guess, I've said my piece, and you can guess how I'm gonna vote. So, I don't know why, I don't need to say any more unless it's in rebuttal.
I just, for the public record, I want to make one last point on the planning and zoning. So it was referenced before and pointed out that we had representatives from Brown County home builders, et cetera, and noted that one of the speakers was not necessarily a resident of Suamico. And it gives the impression that there were not considerations given to residents of Suamico with regard to this ordinance. I would emphasize that every meeting is a public meeting. The detail is listed for anyone to attend. Those planning and zoning meetings, and more importantly, when we look at the Planning and Zoning Commission, we have individuals who have been long time residents I've been a resident of Suamico since 1999. I'm not even including myself, and there were at least 3 members on the Planning and Zoning Commission that have been here since before 1999, a few who have served on the board and served the village quite well. So when you talk about experience in planning and zoning and why this is coming up, this isn't just some fly-by-night bias just because we're trying to create this. This is the experience of individuals who have been longtime residents of Suamico who have supported a comprehensive plan in the past that has supported 100-foot lots. Times have changed, and my feeling is we need to change with it. That's why this is in front of us. Any last comments before we look for a motion? Anyone?
Just as a rebuttal, Mayor, what I'm asking for doesn't change any of that. It adds another tool. You may feel it's not necessary. Comprehensive committee might feel it's necessary, and then they would have, then what the solution is, they have to go through this whole process. I'd rather just put it in their box now. If it doesn't get used, it doesn't get used.
Okay.
Let's do this once.
All right. If there are no other comments or questions or discussion, then we would look for a motion. Anyone willing to step up with a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve ordinance 2025-05, amending 18.05 establishment of zones and 18.09 residential sewer of the municipal code.
Thank you. We've got a motion to approve the ordinance change 2025-05, amending 1805 establishment of zones and 18.09 RS of the municipal code. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
We have a second from trustee Stevens, and maybe I failed to mention the original motion from trustee Andrews. All right. Any last questions, comments on this one? All right, let's do a roll call, please.
Trustee Andrews.
Aye.
Trustee Eckert.
Nay.
Trustee Neto.
Nay.
Trustee McKeefrey. Aye. Trustee Romas.
Nay.
Trustee Stevens.
Aye.
President Van Rossum.
Aye.
Motion carries 4-3.
Okay, thank you. Moving on, Public Works items. This is item 8A. This is the water main easement to accommodate the placement of the village's water main along Lineville Road. Director Smith.
All right, thank you. Through the Lineville Road reconstruction project, we've been relocating our water and sanitary utilities to accommodate the roadway and trail expansion. We encountered a location that was very congested with other utilities such as gas, underground and overhead electric, and a multitude of communication lines and cabinets. Our water was in first 20-some years ago, and since then, other utilities have kind of encroached and built their facilities around ours. So we felt it best to kind of move it and get it out and around that very congested area. That will, help the redundancy in our system and reliability. And if we ever have an issue in that corner, it's much easier to repair in a much more timely fashion. So we felt it best to abandon a small little piece in that corner and kind of jut it out and around to make it more efficient. With doing this, we needed to acquire an easement to encompass our new water main. We currently have our utilities in that area in an easement, so our north-south portion of our utilities where it comes through the urban edge development down to Lineville Road is already in a 60-foot easement. So this would just be an adjacent easement to our existing easement as the utilities go north from Lineville Road. I've attached a site plan of what the proposed utilities would look like, or the proposed water main would look like, and how the easements would cover that new water main. Attached is the easements as well with the exhibits for those easements, and Administrator Kaker did secure the approval of the easements from the owner. So tonight we'd be looking for a motion to approve the signing of the water main easements to accommodate the placement of the village's water main along Lineville Road.
And I just wanted to give a quick hat tip to Jeff Nelner of Midwest Expansion. He did not have to play nice with us, but he did, so we appreciate it.
Where's that corner?
The very east end, right in front of Starbucks.
Okay.
So right where Starbucks drive-through kind of turns in towards Starbucks facility there, right towards Lineville Road from that location. So if you drive through there, you'll see there's like 4 or 5 screen communication cabinets, electric cabinets, there's overhead power, underground gas. Just a lot going on in there because of the development of Urban Edge and all the development that's happened over the years. And our water main was there, and it just got really crowded, and it made it almost impossible to do any sort of relocation in that area because there's just so many other facilities and stuff underground. It looks like a bowl of spaghetti, if you can just imagine what that looks like. Then you stick your finger in it, that's what our water looked like.
I know where not to dig.
No.
I can't picture it. I mean, you know, you're gonna, so you're on the trail. Let's say you want to go to one of the shops. How accessible is that going to be?
There'll be entrances at the both roundabouts. So there'll be an entrance going up into the north leg there that goes up into by Capital Credit Union. And then there'll also be an entrance or a area to access the trail and then go up into the Urban Edge parking lot over at the new roundabout by Cornell.
That's Starbucks.
And everything will be graded, you know, at a less than a 4% from the back of their existing parking lot. So their south side of that whole entire parking lot is going to be graded with a grass terrace to the back of the trail. So you could walk across at any point if you were looking to get in a specific shop. But otherwise, there will be ADA compliant, you know, entrances and exits off of that trail at each roundabout and at each crossing.
You can walk on Jeff's grass.
Well, I may want to ask
I don't
first,
think he gave us that permission.
All right.
but you will be able to. I mean, it'll be graded out nice and it'll be all the
I
little,
didn't say I would.
the little decorative landscape things you see along his parking lot, that's all going away. So it's just going to be one flat grass terraced area between his parking lot and the trail.
Other questions?
And what's the monetary impact?
For the easement, there was none because of the generosity of the owner.
Well, I'd be happy to make a motion then.
All right, we're getting the monetary piece out of the way.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the signing of the water main easements to accommodate the placement of the village's water main along Lineville Road.
Trustee Romas has offered a motion to approve the signing of the water main easement to accommodate the placement of the village's water main along Lineville Road. Is there a second? Second. I have a second from trustee Neto this evening. Any other further comments or questions? Roll call, please.
Trustee Eckert.
Aye.
Trustee Neto.
Aye.
Trustee McKeefrey. Aye. Trustee Romas.
Aye.
Trustee Stevens.
Aye.
Trustee Andrews.
Aye.
President Van Rossum.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously 7-0. Thank you.
Terrific, thank you. All right, we are on to item 9A this evening. Item 9A is an administrative item. It is the public improvement agreement with Deerfield Real Estate Adventures LLC to construct Deerfield Court. Administrator Kaker.
Thank you. So located within Tax Incremental District Number 1, Deerfield Court is currently an unimproved right-of-way adjacent to 4 vacant parcels totaling approximately 38 acres. It is unlikely that 3 of those parcels would ever be able to develop without the construction of a road and utilities. These 4 parcels were recently purchased by a developer who has agreed to pay half of the costs to construct the improvements. They also agreed to a clawback provision where they are required to improve the land by $4 million by January 1 of 2028. And if not, the village will have the right to assess those lots for the village's contribution to the project. Current cost estimate for the total project is about $530,000. And if approved, village staff would finish the design and bid the project prior to the expenditure period of the TID occurring on January 1 of 2026. Construction would be scheduled for 2026, and the village's initial funding would come from TID 1, which has the available balance to cover the project. And a copy of the agreement was included in your packet. And so the motion before the board tonight is to either approve or reject the public improvement agreement with Deerfield Real Estate Adventures LLC. Happy to answer any questions the board may have.
So with the TID, we have to use it before January 1st, right?
We have to enter into an agreement, a contract by January 1 of 2026.
And this is 531,000. What's left in it?
The current ending balance of TID 1 was somewhere around 1.5 million.
Okay.
So your new projected final balance in 2031 would be around $1 million.
Other questions?
we've had our eyes on this type of project for quite some time and finally have a developer that's willing to work with us on it.
It's terrific. Anyone? Otherwise, we'll look for a motion. Or I can offer a motion, I'll offer a motion to approve the public improvement agreement with Deerfield Real Estate Adventures LLC.
Second.
And I have a second from trustee Andrews on the end. Any other further questions or discussion from the board? Roll call, please.
Trustee Neto.
Aye.
Trustee McKeefery. Aye. Trustee Romas.
Aye.
Trustee Stevens.
Aye.
Trustee Andrews.
Aye.
Trustee Eckert.
Aye.
President Van Rossum.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously, 7-0. Thank you.
Terrific. Item 9B this evening is an administrative item concerning the possible closure of the Village Hall on Friday, December 26th, 2025. Administrator Kaker.
Thank you. So with Christmas Eve and Christmas Day falling on Wednesday and Thursday this year, Village Hall will already be closed on those days. And looking ahead to Friday, December 26th, the office is scheduled to be open from 7 to 11, and I anticipate very little foot traffic. I'm requesting that the Village Board consider authorizing the closure of Village Hall for that morning, and if this is agreeable, we would credit full-time employees with an additional 4 hours of holiday pay. And this shouldn't be a recurring request. The next time that Christmas falls on a Thursday is 2031.
Okay.
Where's the extra money